A very good morning to you. Thank you very much for joining us here on KBC Channel 1. It is time for BizCheck. My name is Betty Kiptum. Now, over the next 2 hours, we shall be having quite some important conversations. Our first conversation will be on matters sustainable urban development. And to have this conversation in studio with me is Acting Executive Director in charge of the UN Habitat, Dr. Michal Mlinar. Our second conversation will be on matters nuclear energy development, and we shall be talking about the planned construction of a power plant in Kilifi County. What are the risks? What are the potential benefits of that particular power plant? And later on in the conversation, we shall be talking about matters clean energy and how rural households can have better access to clean energy. Over time, during this conversation, we shall also be taking you to the field where our reporters are pitching camp at different functions to just bring you up to date on what is happening across the country. Now we get into that particular first conversation on matters sustainable urban development. Dr. Mlinar, thank you very much for joining us.
Good morning. Thank you.
Good morning. What is sustainable urban development?
It's maybe a little bit academic from the first sight, but I think all know that the future of the world is urban, meaning more and more people are coming to live in the urban context in our cities. Mm-hmm. So, of course, our focus is to ensure that our life in the cities today and tomorrow is better, that we have an appropriate quality of life, and that our cities are socially and environmentally sustainable and well planned.
Mm-hmm. But that has not been the case so far, has it?
Unfortunately, in many cases it hasn't. And that's indeed the heart of our mandate, where UN Habitat has been assisting national governments, but also local, regional governments and other actors to do proper urban planning, urban design, and to focus on policies that are, as I said, socially and environmentally sustainable in our cities, but also in human settlements in general.
Mm-hmm. Let's talk about what has been happening so far. The urbanization rate has been increasing, and also the population increase has been, very rapid. So what has this done to cities right now?
Indeed, currently in Kenya, we have about 50% of the population already urbanized, so to say, or living in the urban context, not only in Nairobi itself or in larger cities, but also in smaller and mid-sized cities, because it's also in those places about the provision of the relevant services to the people. So, of course, urbanization is wider than just the focus on the big cities. And the projected rate by 2050 is that it will be up to 70% of Kenyans living in the urban context. So, of course, we need to be focused on, what it will mean for all of us, and how to ensure that indeed Kenyans and, of course, people in many other parts of the world as well have a good quality of life in the urbanizing world.
Mm-hmm. And how can this be achieved specifically?
Well, it often starts with good urban and housing policies. And indeed, housing is the transformative part of the equation. We often refer to housing as the access issue, because, of course, if we can focus properly on housing, then from that we can start having further conversations about access to water, access to sanitation, but also access to basic services, including education and health. So from a small issue, suddenly things open up to a much broader conversation.
Mm-hmm. So when you talk about the policy environment, currently urbanization is rising, but the income levels are going lower. So that means there is need for affordable housing, as you've just put it, for the people who are moving to the urban areas. How can the government work towards this goal, especially considering that in Kenya there are affordable housing programs going on?
Indeed, UN Habitat has its global headquarters in Nairobi. So in as far as we have a global mandate, of course, being in Nairobi and in Kenya, we have a special connection, special affiliation with the government of Kenya, but also county governments and other actors. We have 2 officers working with us on a permanent basis from the Ministry of Housing at UN Habitat, whereby we are indeed on a daily basis focusing on advising Kenya and supporting Kenya in the expertise in the context of ensuring that indeed urbanization is addressed properly, and that the policies, the planning is taking into account the realities of today, but also projections of tomorrow. And here there is a lot of focus also on the future generations, on the young people, and on their needs. And of course, affordable housing is at the very heart of the conversation. So we see that in as far as the need, the demand for housing in Kenya is about 250,000 new units annually. For now, Kenya is getting only about 50,000. So the gap is obviously there, and that's why this issue needs to be properly accelerated. So, of course, our focus is primarily on the policies, but we also support the government and the county governments with some specific projects that can then have a transformative and wider meaning. One particular example is Mavoko, not far from Nairobi or in the outskirts of Nairobi, where we have supported the government with building more than 5,000 new housing units. And in general, of course, there is a lot of focus on ensuring that whatever is done is not in the future somehow causing additional challenges that already now at the planning stage we are well aware of the climate effects that may be happening. We have seen so much recently the effects of the El Nino in Nairobi and the area. So of course we need to focus on those issues as well. But as I said, water, energy, sanitation, education, health, these are all crucial issues. And then, of course, the job markets, the economic environment or the economic ecosystem, and the way people are able to commute from where they live into where they work, maybe bringing the job opportunities indeed closer to the places where they live. And that can also directly or indirectly contribute to slowing down or addressing some of these urbanization challenges.
Mm-hmm. The other bit of urban planning includes the use of the natural resources as well, you know, ensuring that you're building in a way that conserves these natural resources. When you look at Nairobi River, it's almost like a Nairobi, sewer, because it's very dirty and polluted. There are cities that have their rivers running and, they even fish in the cities. Is there any hope for maybe a city like Nairobi whose natural resources have been impacted by the population growth in the city?
You hit the nail on its head, as we say. This is actually one of the areas where we support the government and the Nairobi City County as well. The Nairobi Rivers project is one of the important areas where we work. But I think we have to start by saying that Kenya indeed has been blessed with natural resources, including potential for solar energy to be generated, geothermal. Of course, is another very important source of energy. I served in this beautiful country before as Balozi wa Slovakia, Kenya, 2012 to 2015, and I had the opportunity to visit many different parts of the country and to engage on some of these issues. So I dare to say that I have a sufficiently good picture about some of these areas. But back to the Nairobi Rivers project, as you know, government has set up the Nairobi Rivers Commission that has been tasked with a comprehensive work on this particular issue. Myself, I have seen the Nairobi Rivers, and I have to agree with your description. Particularly in the Mathare slum, where we have a youth project that we support, the situation is quite alarming. So indeed, in the planning stage, we have to address all the root causes properly. That includes actually housing, informal settlements, because it's fairly easy to clean up the rivers. It can be done within a couple of weeks, let's say. But if we don't address the root causes, including housing, informal settlements, but also, access for the people, access to jobs and to alternative sources of income, let's say, then we will be failing, or then the solutions will be only partial. So we hope that within the next 2 years we can indeed get some serious results in that context, and that around the Nairobi rivers you can create some municipal parks, or you can create areas for recreation, for sports, and indeed that you can bring new life to the Nairobi rivers and offer to the residents better quality of life also in that context. I'm very excited about that work.
Right, let's hope that comes to pass, yeah? Let's talk about the devolved units. Since devolution came to Kenya, of course, the towns in those counties have been growing very rapidly. What lessons can be learned from the already developed towns, like the cities like Nairobi, Mombasa, Kisumu? What lessons can these smaller towns learn as they grow?
Well, as I said, urbanization is very much also about smaller or mid-sized cities, as we refer to them. But paradoxically, maybe, urbanization also takes place in rural areas, because it's also about improving quality of life and bringing the services, what we sometimes call urban services, to the people even in the rural areas. And this is very important, because Kenya's rural population is indeed its wealth, and in many ways, Kenya's economy is based on the agricultural production, on the food cycles and all that. So even addressing the basic services in the rural areas is an absolutely important issue that can contribute to improving the quality of life for the people where they are, where they are based, even in the rural areas. But it's natural that especially young people are pushing, and they are really creating pressure on the cities, whether larger or smaller ones, and the lessons that we have seen in many of the Kenyan mid-size and smaller cities clearly indicate that when you bring the decision making down closer to the people, to where the people live, then you can really address these challenges in a much faster and in a much more sustainable way. So the devolution process has been extremely important and transformational. And again, I served here before at that time in 2013 when the first governors were elected and when they took over. And when the processes started, because this way now resources have been brought closer to the people, and also the representation has been coming closer to the people. The governors, the MCAs, they should be directly accountable to the people that they serve on the local level, and they should design those practical everyday solutions for the residents of Mombasa, of Kisumu, of Eldoret and other places. And we see, I dare to say that we have seen major progress, major improvements. Of course, challenges remain, and for that reason, UN Habitat's work is so important, because we are there to beef up all levels of government in Kenya with the expertise, with the impartial and credible sources of advice and of expertise that we are bringing in the area of sustainable urban development. Because we know that some of the solutions are a little bit more sensitive, and some of the solutions may not necessarily be well understood or very popular among the Wananchi. So, of course, when it comes from a global UN organization like UN Habitat, it can be very helpful to the government, but also to the governors to, based on data, based on evidence, show to the people that this is the course that needs to be taken in terms of planning, properly balancing the economic activities with the environment, while at the same time also taking into account new challenges such as climate, but also, of course, energy-related issues, and the demographics. Of course, the fact that we have more and more young people, and so we cannot survive without proper education, without good quality education offered to each and every young Kenyan. In order, of course, to increase their chances to be successful in the job market. In the end, then, to be able to afford appropriate housing. And so things are really very closely interlinked.
Yes, clearly so. When you talk about the policy and regulatory environment, I'm sure there are very many policies, beautiful, laws that guide this sector. Sometimes it comes down to the implementation bit. We have seen building plans have been approved, but what is constructed is not, according to the building plans. And it sometimes, unfortunately, ends up in collapsed buildings and, deaths and loss of property. How can we surmount this challenge?
Indeed, we have seen some of those situations. I think now a bit less than before, thank goodness. So I think it is becoming more and more obvious that proper and timely planning is essential. Well, the challenge is that there is sometimes a clash of interest. And we know that the business sector or private companies, they play a key role in the housing sector in particular, because indeed somebody has to build the houses and somebody has to maintain them. So of course it is closely linked to businesses, and we have to have a strong partnership and good conversations with the private sector to have them from the outset as part of the solution, and ensure that, of course, the solutions that we design also take into account their interests, if you will, or that we are sufficiently clear about the space that they are occupying, and if they are part of the solution rather than potentially part of the problem, that's absolutely important. And we have seen, and in our conversations with the government, that of course different incentives that can be offered to the private sector in terms of taxation breaks or in terms of subsidies for affordable housing. This is one of the potential accelerators of this particular area. And of course, there has to be proper regulation. And of course, that regulation also has to be enforced. If somebody doesn't build according to the necessary standards, then of course they cannot continue. They have to be held accountable. But again, I think we have seen increasing awareness and increasing understanding of these important issues, and I hope we are on the right track. We have beefed up at UN Habitat our Kenya Country program, Recently we have been really able to accelerate our engagement with all levels of governance. One of the governors from Kenya, Honorable Professor Peter Anyanyong, Governor of Kisumu, is also a member of UN Secretary General's Advisory Group on cooperation with local and regional authorities. So you can see that Kenya's devolution process can be, in fact, the experience from it can be useful also for some global conversations, because in general we are promoting better engagement between the member states, the governments, and local and regional authorities. Of course, there is no one-size-fits-all, but Kenya's model is inspirational in many ways, and I think you can be quite proud of the transformation that it has brought to this country.
Urban cities, no doubt, contribute greatly to the greenhouse gas emissions. There's also the other bit of the energy consumption is almost unsustainable, yeah? It's very high. What efforts are going into greening our cities?
An excellent point, and of course we work very hard on solutions in this particular area. If you wanted me to quickly just mention 3 priorities, then you have already heard the number one, housing. Now you have just touched on green cities, or also on environmentally sustainable and of course climate resilient cities. And third issue is localization of the sustainable development goals and cooperation with local and regional authorities that I have already mentioned. So green cities is an absolute must for the future. Again, our cooperation with Governor Sakaja of Nairobi is a good example. We have recently in December signed a protocol on more structured cooperation precisely in these areas, where even in practical terms, in addition to the advisory capacity, we are supporting the city in really being able to take full advantage or capitalize on even small opportunities where municipal parks can be created, or where public space can and should be turned into parks, whether for people just to spend their free time or for children to play. So these solutions are crucial, but of course it has to do a lot with energy as well. You touched on the energy consumption, which remains a challenge. We have seen some blackouts also recently as a result of weather or other challenges. But again, I think you are on the right track in prioritizing more sustainable sources of energy. Of course, solar, but also geothermal. And I will myself be very interested to listen to your next conversation about the nuclear power plant, because in my own country, Slovakia, we have quite a few nuclear power plants, and up to 80% of our total energy consumption is generated in nuclear power plants. But that's a separate conversation, of course. No, we need to cut down on the fossil fuels. That's an absolute must. But I think already a lot is being done here in Kenya. One other, in addition to the Nairobi Rivers project, one other particularly positive example, I believe, of our engagement in Kenya is the Go Blue project, which encompasses the five coastal counties plus Taita Taveta, where we have been assisting the government and the county governments in the numerous areas, capitalizing on the ocean. And of course, addressing also some of the challenges, including waste management and pollution of the ocean, potential overfishing, creating new opportunities, like, for example, teaching fishermen how to take care of fish ponds outside of the traditional ocean context, and other areas. And we have been able to already influence in a positive way lives of more than 10,000 Kenyans in these areas. And of course the project continues with the support of the European Union and a few European Union members such as Germany, France, Italy, and Portugal.
Mm-hmm. Of course, achieving sustainable urban development is not a reserve of any country. It has to be a global conversation, right? And the World Urban Forum is coming up in November. Please tell us about that.
Absolutely. Thanks very much for mentioning that. This is a source of our great pride. And Kenya is very much part of the story, because the first World Urban Forum was held back in 2001 in Nairobi. So we started with this concept of bringing together all different types of actors who are somehow involved in these urban discussions together. So this time we are coming back to Africa, a second time in Africa since 2001. So we will meet from the 4th to the 8th of November in Cairo, Egypt, and it will be a super important opportunity to discuss urbanization issues, housing, climate, but also urban crises, because unfortunately we have seen a lot of those recently, man-made or natural disasters related. We are hoping to bring close to 30,000 people, whether ministers, government officials, local and regional government representatives, but also the professional associations, architects, urban planners, but also real estate, private sector actors and others. We are already in touch with the Ministry of Housing here in Kenya, but also with other members of the government, and we hope that Kenya will be very forcefully represented in the political, but also in the professional context. And we will also have a youth assembly that will be part of the World Urban Forum. And we recently discussed with Cabinet Secretary for Youth and Sports, Honorable Nambambwa, that he will himself lead a delegation of Kenyan youth whose voice is absolutely crucial in these conversations. So it will be an important conversation, but we hope with some major impact on how to better foster and shape all these sustainable policies, in particular in Africa. Mm-hmm. And of course, given what is happening in the world today, the unfortunate aggression against Ukraine, and the unfortunate conflict in the Middle East, we have some additional challenges to address, and to also look at how collectively we will then achieve reconstruction and rebuilding of conflict-affected areas. Also in many parts of Africa, in the Sahel, or in places like Syria, Yemen, Libya, and many others. Mm-hmm.
Well, we look forward to that particular conversation during the World Urban Forum. I'd like us to discuss the issue of pollution. I mean, it's there to see, the impact of pollution that pollution is having on cities. What steps can be taken to reduce pollution in cities, both from a government perspective and from an individual perspective as well?
Indeed, everybody has a role to play. And again, in some of the projects that we have supported in Africa, but also in other parts of the world, we have seen the transformational power of non-governmental organizations and our youth really generating additional push in that particular area. We can all start from ourselves on the local level, whether it is garbage collection or separation and other practical solutions. But of course, the picture would not be complete without addressing the major polluters, including the industry and the businesses. At UN Habitat, we have a special platform which is called World Urban Conversation, where we are involving the business actors in cooperation with us and in committing to subscribe to certain basic policy steps that of course should be done. So in terms of reducing the emissions, in terms of promoting green and sustainable solutions, and other similar steps. We are focusing in particular also on the construction companies and on the built environment, because as I'm sure you will agree with me, there is a lot of carbon generated in that particular context, and one of the worst situations that we can have or continue having in our cities is that everything is made of concrete, and there is no room left for trees, for grass, but also for water. And indeed, we have seen that we can reduce on concrete. We can reduce on using carbon-heavy materials and methods, and we can indeed do more. So we have a consortium that we work with, both in the United States, in Africa, and in Europe, where we involve the important players in the construction sector, but also real estate actors and others in committing through a charter to decarbonizing the built environment. And this is the next chapter, I would say. This is the way to go for us in the future. And by creating this new, more conducive environment to sustainable and green solutions, I think we are also influencing the minds and the conscience of others in terms of pollution, or in terms of continuing with the ways of life which are no longer sustainable. We can no longer afford to generate uncontrollable amount of waste. We can no longer afford not to separate waste. We can no longer afford to have proper waste processing. And again, this is room also for the private sector, because paradoxically, waste is a source of income and of wealth potentially. We have again seen it, for example, recently in the global project in Taita Taveta, where we have completely been able to regenerate the old dumping site, create a new one, a sustainable one, and have the whole waste processing, waste management chain improved, including creating some job opportunities, in particular for young women in the waste processing and separation.
Right.
So this is the way to go.
I like that you've mentioned the issue of waste processing. There are some cities or countries that have got it right. Clearly, Nairobi and Kenya, especially the Kenyan urban centers, are still struggling with this. Dump sites all over the place. Very little is happening in terms of recycling and processing of that waste. What can we do? What can we do to solve this situation?
Again, we need to have an important conversation of all different levels of governance and design solutions accordingly. We have seen some good results of that already. For example, the case that I mentioned from Taita Taveta, but there is a lot more to be done because, well, you have been a trailblazer in banning plastic bags, and I do remember very well my good friend, the former CS of Environment, Professor Judy Makungu, when she initiated that. It was not easy. It was potentially even controversial, but this is the way forward for sure. And I think with some appropriate activism and some appropriate focus and energy, even the whole waste management context can be changed. We need to do better on waste separation because it's no longer sustainable to put all the waste together in the way we see it often. And then again, as I said, the dumping sites need to be first, of course, regenerated, and then, where possible, kept where they are, but of course, upgraded to the next level, so that the processing and separation is appropriately done. Or where we see situations where it's no longer feasible, like in the context or in the relation to the Nairobi rivers, then of course we have to look for sites which are done in different locations. And again, there is another important area of our work, which is land management and land tenure, which is crucial for housing, but it's also crucial for waste management. Part of our portfolio is the global land management network, where we can also offer to Kenya different positive experiences from other countries where they have managed to coordinate properly on the local but also on the national level the land context, of course with housing on one hand, but also with waste management on the other.
Right. So as we come to a close of this conversation, I'd like to get your closing remarks, specifically on the future of urban living.
Well, as I said in the beginning, our future is urban. And I don't think we should feel scared about that. We should embrace the urban future, even with its challenges, as a key transformational opportunity. Because yes, we now see that up to 70% of Kenya's population, for example, will be urbanized. Up to 70% of carbon production will also be happening in the cities. And yet, 80% of the GDP is generated in the cities. So it comes with opportunities, and it is our collective responsibility to take good advantage of those opportunities and to make things right. And UN Habitat is the strongest of partners for Kenyans to achieve just that, to have those opportunities make you shine also in these important areas of sustainable development. And I would like to invite everybody to also check our social media channels, UN Habitat, whether on Twitter or X or on other social media channels, but also our website, www.unhabitat.org, where many of these solutions and many of these policies are articulated. And of course, we look forward to engaging with many of your viewers.
Awesome. Thank you very much for sharing your thoughts with us.
Thanks very much.
That is Dr. Michal Mlinar. Dr. Michal Mlinar is the Acting Executive Director in charge of the UN Habitat, and we have been talking about sustainable urban development, the journey towards ensuring that our cities are remaining sustainable even as they develop further and more people move from rural to the urban areas. That is the first conversation of BizCheck this morning. We want to take a quick break. When we come back, the conversation about nuclear energy production in Kenya begins. Do stay with us.